Hi, guys. This is Tiff Kline. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight is a very special podcast, and it will be airing on not one, but two of my podcasts, True Crime with Tiff Kline and Turning the Korner. Tonight, I interview Hope Hooton, a woman I had met through CrimeCon in the true crime community. And I had the pleasure of meeting Hope in person back in end of May at Caesars in Vegas for CrimeCon. After being social media friends for the past year since Denver, when we were out there for CrimeCon, yes, we travel around, and we'll be going to Orlando in 2027. Through this true crime community, I have met a lot of strong women and men. I have listened to a lot of stories. I have shed a lot of tears, but this one gave me hope. This one gave me faith. This one gave me a message that I needed to hear that I didn't know what I was looking for. And Hope Hooton and I agree that people do cross your path for a reason. You meet everybody for a reason. And what I didn't know is that I needed to talk to Hope today because she did give me hope and things are aligning. And she's just an amazing human being and mother. And I wanted her to share her story tonight because I feel she's doing amazing things through the trauma and tragedy she's endured. She is out making changes to bills in different states like Arizona and currently working on Michigan to change the laws and protocols with domestic violence and child custody cases. Because her children, Alec and Lydia, their lives were taken by their father, and then he took his own life. And Hope is here to give us her story, tell us about who Alec and Lydia were, what she's been doing to keep their legacy alive, what she's been doing to help keep other children alive. You may be familiar with her. She is a resilient woman, courageous advocate, and social media influencer, known as Hope in the Pain across social media. She is the host of the podcast Voices Against Filicide and the founder of the movement of the same name, dedicated to raising awareness of child safety, domestic violence, filicide, and family court reform. Recently, near the publishing of her book, she has been championing the Alec and Lydia Act in Arizona legislation, and the bill just passed in June 2026. She is currently working on Michigan, and through sharing her deeply personal journey, she includes the preventable deaths of her children. Alec and Lydia, Hope inspires audiences with a message of resilience, faith, and hope, and she continues to push for change, advocating for stronger child safety laws and family court reforms to protect families and children, empowering communities to take action and prevent tragedies before they happen. This can be very emotional. It could be triggering. So there is a warning that what Hope discusses tonight could be very heavy. And we talk about abuse, suicide, and child loss. But there's still hope. And I'd love to introduce you to Hope Hooton, who survived the odds and grew up navigating life with severe vision loss. And she's learned early that hardship can be loud, unpredictable, and relentless. Still, she built a life she loved, one rooted in family, teaching, and faith. Tonight, I welcome Hope Hooton to True Crime with Tiff Kline and Turning the Korner. And I hope you give this episode your undivided attention and learn about filicide and what it means, and help support the Alec and Lydia Act and other acts in your state to help prevent tragedies like this from happening to other families and children across the United States. So without further ado, Hope Hooton, welcome to my show. And please, please know that this is an honor.
My name is Hope Hooton. I am the mother of Alec and Lydia Mater, two children who lost their lives to filicide, which is the intentional act of a parent killing their own child. They were murdered by my estranged husband, their father, in May 2024, and then he took his own life. So now I raise awareness and I advocate for change in legislation, amongst other things that we will talk about in this podcast. So I guess first I want to talk about who Alec and Lydia were. Alec was 7 years old. He was my firstborn child, and he was a bundle of joy, bright blue eyes, loved Pokemon. His favorite Pokemon was Pikachu, and he loved soccer and basketball and playing in the backyard, swimming, and he loved his friends, and he was such a kind, sweet little boy. Rambunctious, but super, super kind and wanted to be everybody's friend, just very respectful. Lydia, our daughter, was 6, just to turn 6, 5 days before she was murdered, and she loved sparkles and unicorns, and she had bright blue eyes as well, more blue than even Alec's eyes. They were like pools of blue. She loved riding her scooter, and she was Alec's shadow. So everything that Alec did, Lydia wanted to do. And so they were inseparable. I would often find Lydia in Alec's room or with Alec in the backyard playing with him instead of playing with her own toys because she wanted to do everything that her big brother did. They were only 22 months apart, so they were pretty close in age.
Wow, yeah, that's like Irish twins almost.
Yeah,
That's close.
they're
Wow.
pretty close in age. Yeah, yep,
Aw.
almost 22 months to the day. So, yeah, and then yeah, they were just great. Lots of memories made with them, and now I keep their legacy alive by doing what I do every day by sharing their story and sharing, yes, what happened to them, but like I just shared with you, who they were as children, because I want the focus to be on that instead of, how they died.
Yeah, no, listen, that's what my show's about. And I want you to tell me anything and everything you can about your children because they looked like a light and they looked very close to you. I saw a lot of your pictures. Obviously, you know that I've shared some videos and I'm just very proud of you for everything you've done. That is incredible strength, Hope. I couldn't do it. So for you to be able to get up every day and face that is just I don't even have words. When my mom met
Mhm.
you at CrimeCon, she walked away and she was crying and she says, "How does she do that every day?" And I said, "Mom, some people are very special and can. It's just,
Yeah.
and you turn literally you turn your pain into hope. Thank
Yeah.
you for being on the show because like I met you through CrimeCon and Facebook
Mhm.
and things like that, but I never really got to sit and talk to you about your
Mhm.
bill that you were being like, that you passed in Arizona, the one you're working on in Michigan. I never really got to hear it from you. So I would
Yeah.
really like to learn more about you and your children and anything
Yeah.
you'd like to share with my listeners and your listeners, have at it.
Yeah, so basically, I'll give you kind of what happened in a nutshell, and then I'll take you through what the Alec and Lydia Act is so that no other child has to endure what Alec and Lydia had to endure. No other parent has to lose a child, hopefully. And so, yeah, a strange husband, that's what I refer to him as because we were separated at the time we were going through a divorce. We were married and together for about 12 to 13 years, and I finally left the marriage because of severe abuse, physical violence, sexual violence, all of the abuse pieces on the abuse cycle I've endured. And so, including coercive control. And so, I finally got up the courage to leave, and everybody asked what was my, like, aha moment of, like, the light bulb coming on and, like, choosing to leave, and that was my parents had passed away. My mom passed in November of 2021 from a car accident. My dad died of, kidney failure just 7 months later in July of 2022, so I lost them very close together, and that was really very devastating for the whole family, and so I just kind of had enough, and I really started researching, what I was going through because I had to see what I was experiencing through somebody else's story in order for it to click. I couldn't just research like what is physical violence, what is sexual abuse, what is, coercive control. I had to actually hear survivor stories of what they endured, what they've gone through, and now they were on the other side of it to be able to see that in my own story. And so those two things together and my faith really catapulted me to making that decision to leave. And so I told their father that I was going to leave. It was October 9th, 2023. And when I did so, he threatened his first bout of suicide. He said that he was going to kill the kids in front of, and he was going to kill himself in front of the kids. And so I had to come and get them. And so I hung up the phone with him and called 911, and they came and took him to his first, I guess, small evaluation. I call it. It was a couple of hours because he obviously could tell the nurses and doctors what they wanted to hear to be able to get out, right? And so he did that. And meanwhile, the police officers told me and the kids to go to a hotel. So that's what I did. I packed up bags. I went to a hotel. And shortly after he got out of the hospital, and went back to our home. And so a few days later, I actually applied for a order of protection, and it was granted, and I had the order of protection. I had legal rights over the house, over the dwelling, because the neighborhood that we lived in was also where Alec and Lydia's school was. And because I'm visually impaired, I didn't drive. So getting them to and from school, it was just going to be easier if I could walk them. So the judge granted the order of protection with the house being on the order, meaning I would have complete control of the residence living inside of it with the kids. And then he would have to find another place to live. So that was served to him like October 12th, 2023. And then a couple days later, he took the kids out of school without me knowing. And he was in the middle of a psychotic episode when he did so. And prior to me separating, he never had any issues with psychiatric care, no mental illness. Maybe there were mood swings here and there of like little things, I guess, looking back, but nothing like excessive. And if he did have mental illness, it was never diagnosed.
Wow.
So he took the kids out of school. He was in the middle of psychosis. He started calling me and leaving voicemails stating that people were after him, that Satan was after him, that me and my church, our church, were the church of Satan. And he was very, very paranoid. So I went to the police station and let the police know that he had broken the order of protection, and they wrote a report and served it to him. But while I was at the police station, I got a gut feeling to call the school to check on the kids. And when I did, the secretary told me that they were checked out previously, like maybe a half hour to an hour previously. And I was like in total shock because I knew that he was not okay, because the voicemails he was leaving me didn't even sound like him. And I never experienced any type of mental illness with him prior. So I didn't even know what was going on. So I was super scared. And the police officers told me that, after I did get a hold of the kids and I did talk to them after like an hour and a half of trying to call him and text him. I finally got a hold of them, and I did talk to them. And the police officers told me, because I talked to them and they seemed okay, because there wasn't any paperwork for custody at this point, because we had just filed for divorce like 5 days previously. There was nothing that they could do. So they stated that my best bet was to contact him via text message or email and set up a plan for him to take the kids to school the next day. And so that's what I had to do. Again, mind you, I knew that something was wrong and I knew that this wasn't normal, but I was trying to follow what the police officers and the people in charge that are supposed to know what to do are telling me. So that is why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, because I asked them, like, can you go and do a welfare check? Can you go and check on them? And they said no. Like, they said, like, they seemed fine. You were talking to them, like, we can't just go there and take them from him. That's illegal, because he still has rights over them and he's not doing anything wrong at this point. And so I made a plan with him to take them to school the next day. And I went to bed. And a couple hours later on the same night, late at night, I was woken up by the police department stating that I needed to come to the hotel he was staying at because he was having suicidal and homicidal ideations. He was speaking of those demons and cults again. He was speaking of Satan. And so they had went there and convinced him. They talked with him and they convinced him to go into a voluntary inpatient treatment. So they took him via police car to an inpatient facility. It wasn't a hospital, it was an inpatient facility that deals with mental health and all of that kind of stuff. So when I got there, the kids were sleeping. So I woke them up and my neighbor came and got us and we went home. And I tucked them in and they went back to sleep. And I couldn't sleep all night. I I think I laid down, but I couldn't sleep. And then next morning, I called my attorney, and we got it's called a temporary order put in place, meaning that I would have full custody over the kids on a temporary basis based on the information that I put in the filing, which
Right.
was everything that I just told you regarding the auditory hallucinations, the suicidal and homicidal ideation, the Satan stuff, the cult stuff, the demon stuff. So I put all of that in there, and that was granted on a temporary basis. And so when you have a temporary order that is granted with you not being seen by the judge, and they just grant it based on your evidence and what you write, they have 2 weeks for you to then come in and stand in front of them on the bench and tell them why you want the temporary orders to stay in place, or if you would want something else, different. And so we actually had to push out that hearing, and we went past the 2 weeks window of time that we were supposed to have it because he was still in the psychiatric facility. He was in there for 9 days. So so long time. And when he was in there, he was diagnosed with bipolar, with psychosis, with severe mania. And when he got out, in his filings for court, he only put he had bipolar. He omitted that he had the psychosis with the severe mania. He didn't put it in there. And at the time, I didn't know his diagnosis. Nobody did except for him because of HIPAA. So I couldn't gain access to his diagnosis. And so I thought, okay, well, he wrote bipolar. That must be his diagnosis. Well, come to find out that is not his diagnosis. And in my head, I thought, okay, well, the judge will have to have some sort of proof of like knowing that that's your diagnosis, or some sort of proof to like say, like, yes, he was in the psychiatric facility for 9 days and this is what happened, something.
Yeah.
And there was nothing. He never asked for any documentation to prove anything.
So if you're his you were still legally married at this time, right? Or did the
Yeah.
divorce go through?
No, we were separated. We were in the middle of a divorce.
So
And
why were you not allowed to have access to his information if you were his wife? I mean, I know there's HIPAA, but
because there's HIPAA, plus he would have to sign off on me gaining access, and he never filled that out.
uh, okay. So he
Because
was just
obviously we were divorcing, so
mm,
in his head, like, why would he want me to have access to his records, you
got
know?
it. Mhm.
So, and in my head, I was like, okay, well, this is stuff that the judge and the court system should be asking him. And so when we went back to this temporary orders hearing, I wanted temporary orders to stay in place, which
Mm,
included supervised visits with Brock for 4 hours a day, or 4 hours, sorry, which included supervised visits with him for 4 hours a week. And so, and it would have to be supervised by somebody. I wanted that because
mm,
I didn't want the kids to be taken away from him, but I didn't want him to have like them unsupervised because I knew that he wasn't safe at this
mm,
point because he
mhm.
was just in a psychiatric facility. And with psychiatric meds and all of that, it takes a long time for you to even figure out what works with your system. So I wanted that, and he came in wanting unsupervised 50-50 custody. He had a whole plan already like written out, like what days he wanted them and like all of this stuff. And I'm assuming that, and this is my opinion, but I believe that his attorney and him like, worked on that together and brought that in. And we showed evidence back and forth, and we tried to convey to the judge that he was not safe. He was just in a psychiatric facility. He'd just gotten out a couple of weeks prior to this. He shouldn't have unsupervised custody. And we thought we had a good case. And we walked out of there feeling very confident. And within 48 hours, the judge ruled and stated that he would be granted unsupervised 50-50 custody.
Okay, that's a lot.
So, yeah, so we have not only the mental illness part, but also the domestic violence stuff was also talked about. We had the order of protection, that was evidence. We had all of this stuff. So we have domestic violence, which is a lethality marker.
Mm,
And then now we have mental illness, which is when it's coupled with domestic violence, we know is a lethality marker. So those are huge. So for the judge and not only just to grant 50-50 unsupervised, but only to take 48 hours, they have like their time frame that they could grant another order is up to like 60 days or something like that. And he only took 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a PFA. Well, I didn't have one. I placed one on my ex, and it's still valid. But I remember getting the temporary one, and then it was up to them to see how long they wanted to extend it. And did you have a male judge or a female judge?
I had a male judge.
Male judge. And were your kids close with their dad? Was it, or was this a control tactic because you wanted to leave?
They were close to their dad. That's why I wanted to make sure that they still had supervised time with him, but I knew that they weren't possibly gonna be safe if they were unsupervised.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
so you didn't, the whole time you were married, you didn't see signs of this happening. Do you think you leaving and him maybe losing control because you said there was domestic violence? I'm a survivor too, so I understand without you telling me, but our listeners might not. Do you
Yeah.
think that this, you wanting to leave, is what triggered this episodes or these episodes to start? Or do you think there was just a
Yeah.
control?
Um, yes, they look for like an antecedent that comes first, right? Something to
Mhm.
trigger mental illness, and so they put in their reports in the in the facility that that was probably like the divorce, and this the starting of the divorce and the separation kind of made him spiral. And
Okay.
yes, the loss of control, right? Because he could no longer control me. He didn't have access at that point to the kids, because I mean, he only didn't have access to them for like a week because I took them to that hotel and kept them safe, and I did so because that's what the police told me to do. And we even stated that at the hearing, because that was something that opposing counsel asked, right? Because you're not supposed to keep your kids from someone, like that could be used against you. And I said, well, no, like this is what the police officers told me to do. This is what I was, told to do. I wasn't just keeping them from him just to
Uh-huh.
keep them from him. I was being told to do so for our safety by a police officer.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, so yes, loss of control, and then the spiraling of the mental illness. He didn't eat for several days before that. He wasn't sleeping, I guess, according to the psychiatric reports and stuff in the facility. So, all of that combined together, right? So, a major life change plus not sleeping, plus not eating, like that's going to make you, something's going to snap. So I had to then start co-parenting with him. So it's not only just co-parenting with somebody that I'm divorcing, but I'm co-parenting with my abuser, and I'm co-parenting with someone who I have a protection order against. So when we had to communicate in regards to the kids, it only could be via text message or email, and it had to be only in regards to the kids. So there's a couple instances where he tried to text me regarding like our relationship and wanting to get back together and stuff. And so every time he would do that, I would then take those text messages to my attorney, and then he would then tell his attorney to stop texting me. Now, I know now my attorney should have told me to file a police report every single time one of those orders was broken, but he didn't. He only told me to do that the first time. And I guess in my head, I was like, oh, yeah, he'll tell me if I need to do that again. And I guess, like, maybe again, you're in the middle of so much stress and stuff. I don't even think I would have been like, oh, yeah, I have to do that again. Like, he should have been the one to tell me to do so. So I had to co-parent with him, and it was hard at first for the kids and to get used to going back and forth because it was truly 50-50. He had them on Mondays and Tuesdays, I had them Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then we would switch every other weekend, back and forth. So it was truly 50-50. And it was really hard for the kids to get used to going to both of our houses or places of residence. But got after they got used to it, everything seemed to be okay. And mind you, at the very beginning of this, he's taking his medication probably because he just got out of the facility. He's, still doing his outpatient psychiatric visits. They give you like a couple of them until you get an actual psychiatrist. They give you some, you go back to the outpatient and do it with them. And so everything the first couple of months from like November 2023 up until like probably January 2024 was really good because he was like medicated. He was, doing what he needed to do. We were co-parenting well. He'd gotten a job because he was unemployed prior to this. That was another reason of the financial coercive control, is because he decided to quit his job a year and a half prior to us separating. And I was the sole provider on a teacher's salary. So he got a job and got a place to live, and everything was good. I believe that in February-ish sometime is when things started to slip. He was ordered to do a psychological evaluation. The courts ordered that. And so he had that done. And in the psychological report, it states that he self reported that his meds weren't working. And the psychologist also stated that he believed that Brock wasn't as stable as he seemed. So, those two things are huge red flags that when the psychological report was gone over in April of 2024 weren't brought up. So, we don't even, again, we don't know an actual diagnosis because that was never proven. He's just saying bipolar, but that's not the real diagnosis. Then he didn't even have to prove if he was taking his medication. When I asked the courts to see, like, if we could monitor that, the judge told me that if I wanted to know if he was taking his medications, I could just ask him. So asking him isn't going to do anything. Yes or no isn't going to tell us if he's actually taking them and if they're working.
So you're just supposed to just take his word for it and believe
for
him
for everything.
and be
For
a
everything.
caregiver?
Yeah, for every single thing in this case, it was literally like he didn't have to have any evidence or proof to back anything up. And I'm like, and then for the judge to even put in the order, it's an order, like it's an order. So he wrote it down. If Hope wants to see if he's taking his medication, she can ask him. That's not a proper order. Like, you don't order that. Like, how does that? Like, that's not even possible. So then we have that. Then we have the psychological evaluation that was done, and there's red flags in that.
Sounds like the judge needed a psychological evaluation. Jesus, sorry. I just wow.
Right. Yeah, just so many red flags, so many things, so many risk factors that were ignored. And so after that April 4th hearing, which was the last hearing that we had on the psychological report, the judge stated that he said he didn't see anything that would be a detriment to Alec and Lydia, any reason why they couldn't be in his care. And even though those red flags were in there. And so I believe that the judge didn't even read the full report. This is my opinion and my opinion only. So I'm putting that on the record. But I only feel that he only read the summary, which is the last page of the report. And not everything was in the summary. You have to read the full report. And so about a little over a month later, they were murdered. And so I definitely believe that there were so many red flags and so many lethality risks that could have been stopped by not only the judge, not only my attorney, his attorney, the psychologist, everybody involved. This is when you talk about a systemic failure. This is a systemic failure. Every single person involved in our case failed Alec and Lydia. And so they failed to protect them. They put them in danger. And so now it is my mission in life to make sure that that doesn't happen to any other family. So I've created the Alec and Lydia Act with some legislators, some other people that helped write the bill. There was 2 family law attorneys that really worked over 2 years on this bill, and I came into the picture about a year in. So they'd already been working on drafts of the bill, and then when I came in with my story, they added more of like what happened in my case and what failed me into the legislation. And then we put that into the Alec and Lydia Act, and then it started going through the process. We submitted the bill for the legislative session in 2026. So it started, I think, in January of 2026 is when the legislative session started. So you submit it, and then has to go through a bunch of steps. You have to go through like a judiciary committee, a Senate committee, first, second, and third readings with the House and the Senate. So it has to be read like 6 individual times. There can be amendments made. So there's a bunch of steps in order for a bill to become a law. And it took from January 2026 to June 22nd, 2026 for our bill to become a full law. It was signed into law June 22nd, 2026, and the Arizona governor, Katie Hobbs, signed the bill into legislation. So it's the Alec and Lydia Act. So what it is a bill or a law that will make it so that if there's any domestic violence or coercive control in a case, a family court case, the judge has to stop immediately and look at all of the factors. It also does include if there's any sort of, it includes those lethality risk markers. So if somebody is saying that they're suicidal, if somebody is saying that they're homicidal, those are things that they have to also look at because those are lethality risks. So I got a lot of questions of, why didn't you put more mental health provisions in the legislation? Well, as a country, we're still not done climbing that hill. Mental health and mental illness is a huge hill to climb. And we knew that if we put everything in there that we wanted, it wouldn't have passed. And so that's why we included okay, if they threaten suicide, okay, if they threaten homicide, okay, if they have, these lethality risks that, come before a filicide or any sort of homicide, we know that these are lethality risk markers and the judge has to look at those. So, yeah, so it's really, really amazing. It's landmark legislation. It's been 20 years since the first family court legislation for children was implemented. And I was talking to attorneys in Arizona and they're like, our law hasn't changed in 20 years. And this is upending everything. And now it's a completely new way of doing things. So, if you go into a family court, if you have domestic violence, if you have coercive control, the judge has to immediately stop, look at all those factors of what domestic violence is, what coercive control is, and then if there is a presumption of either domestic violence or coercive control, the judge will automatically put the abuser on supervised parenting time until the abuser can overcome the presumption of abuse, which is huge
Yeah,
because
that's
we know that if there is an abuser in a family dynamic, even though victims, just like me, believe that they're not capable of hurting the child and they haven't even done it yet, it doesn't mean that they're not capable of it in the future. So, because in a lot of these cases, like in Alec and Lydia's case, there was no physical violence to Alec and Lydia prior to them being murdered. They were never physically hurt, maybe psychologically, emotionally, but never physically. He never physically harmed them before murdering them. So, and that's proven data in almost all of these filicide cases. Usually there's not physical violence that comes before it. Usually there's other types of coercion, other types of abuse. So not just physical.
so with moving forward with that bill, and again, congratulations. I'm sure that was
Thank you.
not easy for you. I mean, every time you talk about it, you get stronger, but it reopens that trauma wound. And I can't imagine. I know you always tell me like you're really tired and you don't sleep a lot. And well,
I know.
you're doing things. That's why you're changing. You're making the world a better place. So
Yes.
when I just want to go back a little bit. When you said that
Mhm,
you were in court for that final hearing, did they
mhm.
not bring the psychologist on stand and ask them a
No.
verbal evaluation?
No, they only looked through the report, which is another usually in those cases, I guess, if, you have a good, people around you, they ask for the person to come on the stand or at least give,
Testimony.
something to the judge, testimony of some sort, and that wasn't the case. And also in the case, I'm visually impaired, so I didn't see this at the time,
Uh-huh.
but there's recordings of that last session hearing on April 4th, 2024, and Brock on camera does not look well. He looks disheveled. Again, I couldn't see this stuff, right? I can't tell, but according to people that now have looked through the footage, obviously this is in hindsight, the kids had already passed, but looking at that footage, you can tell he's disheveled, his, hair is a mess, he's not, well kept, like, with his facial hair, his eyes are like darting everywhere. He's not well. And in those hearings, we are asked as the people who are going through the divorce to not say anything unless the judge asks us a question. So in this hearing, it was mostly my attorney and his attorney talking with the judge. We were just sitting there. So we didn't actually communicate or talk at all in that hearing. I think I might have answered like a yes no question from the judge, and so did he, but
Mhm.
nothing substantial. Like we didn't talk.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting, like, looking back, and again, hindsight is 2020, but looking at those clips and being like, "He doesn't look well," and, obviously, I'm visually impaired, but my attorney or the judge or his attorney could have said something like, "Oh,
Yeah.
like, he doesn't look okay," and I know it's virtual, but still.
You can look at somebody, especially if that people know him and have knew him prior, you can tell a drastic change in somebody
Yeah,
physically. And a lot of the times what's going on through somebody's head does appear on their face. So yeah,
yes.
you and your children were failed by every single person that touched this case, and I'm just so sorry.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Another thing with the Alec and Lydia Act that I wanted to make sure was in the bill, which I'm ecstatic about, is now their judges have to write their findings in temporary orders. Meaning, in my temporary orders, my judge only wrote that 50-50 custody will be granted because there was no evidence to show that Alec and Lydia were in danger. But now the judges not only they could write that, but not only they have to write other things of like how they got to that,
Yep.
how did they get to that ruling?
Evidence
And
based.
so
Yep. Mhm.
yep. And so now that's super amazing in my eyes because there won't be any crazy rulings of like, oh, the victim has to monitor the abuser's medication.
I
That's
can't
not going to happen.
that is mind blowing to me, Hope. Like, I mean, isn't that the point of him having a psychologist and a psychiatrist? Like, that's their job,
Yeah,
not yours.
not mine. Yeah. So so the temporary orders will make sure that the judges have to write their findings in those temporary orders, which is huge because prior to this in Arizona, you didn't have to. You only had to technically write your like bullet pointed why and your explanation in paragraph form in final orders. Well, we know that there's so many children that are in danger when you're in temporary orders because temporary orders last for the extent of the whole divorce process. That's
Uh-huh.
temporary orders. You only get your final orders when you're actually like divorced, in that last hearing. So the temporary orders, I've heard of temporary orders going on for like years. And so it's huge for judges to have to stop and write those findings in that and their explanation in that to make sure that children and victims of domestic violence are safe. It also makes it so that in cases of domestic violence or abuse, the abuser can't. I don't know what just happened. Hold on. Okay, can you see me?
Yeah, I can edit. Don't worry.
Okay, my pop up on my screen. It makes it so that the abuser can't say, well, my child was never there when I was abusing my spouse. That can't happen anymore. Or they can't say, my child wasn't there. They can't say, well, my child wants to come with me anyways. And they
Mm,
can't say that it was mutual abuse. They can't say those three things. Those are not allowed anymore. And so that is also huge. And then they're going to have to overcome that presumption of abuse, which is huge. So they're going to have to, take classes, go to counseling, do whatever they need to do to overcome that presumption of abuse. And the guidelines for that, there's not very many because we want to make sure that the person needing the help, the abuser, can get whatever support they need to overcome that. We don't wanna give them a strict, like, guideline because what if that doesn't work for them? So,
yeah.
they're gonna have to work with their attorneys, with the people that they have on their teams to make a plan to overcome that presumption of abuse, and so that's huge. It also includes coercive control, so it includes, stalking. It includes electronic monitoring, so watching your text messages or your emails. It includes financial control, so watching, how much money you spend. And people are like, "Well, that we got this." This was often used in legislation when we were kind of going through the process. Some of the reps and some of the senators, at one point or another, we're saying things like, well, what if like I just monitor the credit card statement? Does that mean it's financial abuse? No. Financial abuse is like when the person, the victim, doesn't have any autonomy over what the money is being spent on, or they don't have any access to the money. So that is financial abuse. It's not
Uh-huh.
just being like, "Oh, my bank statement came in the mail today. Let me look at it." That's not financial abuse.
Uh-huh.
There's a difference there. It's a any sort of coercive control. When a judge is looking at this is another thing that people are kind of worried about, of like, so is one incident of coercive control going to make me have supervised visits with my children? No. Coercive control is a pattern of consistent behaviors over and over and
Uh-huh.
over again. So the judge is going to have to notice and see that pattern, or be shown that pattern via evidence, so that they can understand that. So not only, one incident of something is going to get your, child taken from you. That's not the case. It's going to have
Uh-huh.
to be a pattern of, in my case, it was not only, that, my parents died and he knew that we might be getting some sort of money,
Uh-huh.
so that he was like, "Oh, so we're getting some sort of money, and so I'm gonna quit my job and I'm going to have Hope be the sole provider." Like, that is financial abuse because I didn't have any autonomy in that decision. People still ask me, like, "How come you let him quit his job?" No, no, no. There was no let.
Yeah.
There's no letting him quit his job. There was like, he is going to quit his job no matter what I said. And
Uh-huh.
I still tried to convince him not to, and he didn't listen.
Yeah.
And so that's coercive control. So I think it's really important for people to be educated about coercive control, follow people within the coercive control world that understand and have, been a part of this world and researching coercive control. Dr. Christine Cocciola, she is really, really good at explaining coercive control and how it, bleeds into a family dynamic and what it looks like. Dr. Dale Checka out of Albany, New York, she does the same thing. So there's so many other people as well that have talked about coercive control. So if you don't know what it is, even if I'm, explaining it to you now, please go and check out, articles online by Dale Checka or Christine Cocciola. And both of them are great, and they'll be able to explain real life examples of what coercive control is. But it's basically a loss of a victim's autonomy. I had no sense of self. I was not Hope anymore. I didn't have any choice in any decisions. I was always told what to do, told what I could eat, what I could wear, when I had to work out. Like, all of my autonomy was taken away.
We lived through all of that, and I'm so sorry. It was to a point where I was only allowed to eat certain things too, and people don't realize that that's abuse and control. And well, I got insulted verbally and physically if I did the opposite of what he said. So that goes back to what you just said. Oh yeah, just tell him not to quit his job. You didn't let him. Let me just tell my abuser that he can't do
Yeah.
something and see how that works out for me.
Yeah, yeah, like, you can't. And then the other one, which, as a survivor, "Well, why didn't you just leave?" "Oh, yeah,
Oh
because we could just totally walk out the front door." Like,
yeah.
that's not a option. Like,
Mm-mm.
you are so controlled that you can't just get up and leave. Like, yes, I could get up and go for a walk, but, like, if I didn't come back, you best be sure that he would be calling me or coming to find me. And
Exactly.
in my situation, I don't drive. So, like, he had another layer of control over me, which is transportation abuse, because he could control when I went somewhere, if I went somewhere.
Uh-huh.
If I was supposed to go to the grocery store because we were running out of groceries and he got mad at me for something, we weren't going to get groceries that day. Like, because he was my ride.
Yeah, you
He
were
was
dependent on
he
him for transportation.
I was dependent on him. So, and, you know, even looking back at the beginning, it was so slow over time. I
Uh-huh.
remember I would always take Ubers and Lyfts and stuff when the kids were really little. I would take them and go do stuff. I would take Alec to go to his pediatrician appointments when he was like little, because he wouldn't take me. I would go by myself and I would take an Uber. But as the control got more and more, I stopped taking Ubers and Lyfts because then the financial abuse came in of like, you can't take Ubers and Lyfts because that costs money. And like, we're trying to save money. And his big thing is, also he would say, well, we're trying to pay off debt and we're doing all of, so he wouldn't frame it necessarily in like these like, degrading ways all the time. At the
Yep.
beginning, it was like, I'm doing, we are working out together to be healthy, or we are saving money and we're getting out of debt and we're using the Dave Ramsey plan. So
Mhm.
it wasn't framed as like, you have to do this or else. It wasn't framed like
Yeah,
that. It
no,
was
mine wasn't either. It was more of, "Oh, I'm looking out for you. I have the best interest for both of us, and if you just listen to me, I got this.
yes.
Just take my lead." And then
Hmm.
you fall for it because they just start thinking for you, they start acting for you, they start picking everything out, and you're just like, "Okay, I guess I'll just listen to what you have to say because you know what's best for both of us." And you do.
Yes.
You lose a sense of your identity and who you are, and
Yeah,
I
and, his favorite his saying, this just came back in my head, and I haven't thought about this in forever. His saying was, "I know what's best, I'm an engineer," because he was an engineer, so he'd always be like, "I know what's best, listen to me, I'm an engineer," like, that was his saying all the time.
so
Like,
basically, I'm smarter than you, I'm wiser than you,
yes,
I'm more
yes,
educated. Jesus.
yes. Even though we were both educated equally, I have a bachelor's degree, he had a bachelor's degree. His just was in engineering and mine was in
That
education.
was just the way to cut you down.
I'm
That's
still educated.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Angers me because this is what my first abuser was like, and I haven't really met anybody or talked to anybody that dealt with this, so now it's just like, wow. Like, I know more people deal with it, but it's like, wow, this is almost like a to a T, and I didn't
Yes.
wanna have kids with him because I knew I was gonna put a kid in danger, and this isn't about me, but I
Yeah.
completely understand what you probably went through. I can't assume, but I can understand,
Yes.
that whole coercive control, and that's how they start. That's where the
Mm,
abuse starts, and then it
mhm.
escalates. And then
Yes.
they wanna test you to see your resolve and see how, much you will take, how much you won't take, and it just keeps going and going and going. So it's not really
Yeah.
about them telling you what to do anymore, it's you're afraid to
No.
not do.
You're afraid not to do something
Yeah.
wrong, right?
Yeah.
You're so tightly monitored and yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, I just had somebody on the podcast. She's a counselor, a licensed counselor and therapist, and she said something that was like, "Oh my gosh." She was like, when you have an abuser, because I was, asking her in like a set, like a counseling session, like
Uh-huh.
how that those come across. And she's like, "Yes, I tell my clients, like when your abuser is opening up like the cupboard doors just like an inch and won't close it, but he does it consistently over and over and over again, that's not laziness. That's seeing how far he can get you to like let him do things." And like
Yep.
Brock would be the same way. He would, be like, "Oh, I lost my AirPods." And instead of like just going to look for his AirPods, he would take everything out of our dresser drawers and throw it on the floor, like every single drawer. Even if like he knew that his AirPods weren't in like a certain drawer, but he was going to take it apart anyways. And you know who had to clean it up?
You.
Me. And he did it over and over and over and over again. And so
He
now
was
I know
making
that
you
that was
he was making you obedient, really, is what it was. It was
it was obedience. Yes. He was training me. And I knew in my head, I wasn't raised in an abusive home. I knew that
this
that
wasn't right. Yeah.
this wasn't right, but I still wanted to please him and
Uh-huh.
to be with him. And I thought like, okay, if I just did this harder, if I
Oh,
just did this better, then he'll stop and it will be fine. But it was like he kept moving the goalposts. There was never like he would say, "Oh, if you do this and reach this level, then
uh-huh.
but there's it was always moving. There was no target. It was a moving target."
It's exhausting mentally, physically, emotionally, and, when you said about being told what you could and couldn't eat, my abuser decided to go vegan. And
Mhm.
I would binge eat in my car burgers and chicken and hot dogs. I would do it once in a while, but it got to a point where the only control I had left over my own self, hope,
With
is
food.
I starved myself just
Mm.
out of spite. I became anorexic, and then when I left him, I just started eating everything, and where I'm at now is my normal weight. But I was so skinny that people think, look, if they don't see me for a while and they see me now, they probably think I'm really overweight. I'm like, no, you just saw me when I wasn't like I was underweight. But it
Yeah.
got to a point where I was hiding what I was eating because I was afraid of the abuse, and it
Oh,
was
yeah.
more the verbal and mental abuse from it, just cutting me down, and I hate this for
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
hate that somebody else
Yeah.
understands this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was a huge thing, and still I struggle, like, with any sort of, like, critique or,
Oh,
like, if somebody tries to tell me, like, something and I don't agree with it, it's automatic like, my brain's automatically like, "That's not a safe person," even though they're trying to come at it from a place of love because they're not an abuser, but my brain automatically goes there,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Your
Mm.
brain was rewired that way, and I have more of a problem when it comes from men than it is from women.
Yes, yes.
And I stand to toe to toe. Like I take it too far sometimes. I'm like, you're a man and you're not gonna talk to me that way. You're not gonna tell me what to do. And I rise up. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, think of the situation. What's their intent? But my brain automatically thinks they're out to get me, out to hurt me, out to
Mhm.
manipulate me, bully
Mhm.
me, control me. And that's something I work
Mhm.
on every day. But I don't know if we'll ever be unwired from that, or if that's just gonna be a survival tactic that we carry with us the rest of our life. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm in therapy and
Oh,
it's
too.
helping, but it might just be always that way because we've lived it. I mean, I was in this for, 13 years. So
Nine.
if I was in it for 13 years, imagine how much unlearning I'm going to have to it's going to take me I mean, I'm almost 3 years out from separation, over 2 years out from them passing away. But like it's gonna take more than 3 years for me to get over it, like, it's gonna
Uh-huh.
take a lot longer for me to get
Process.
to process this and to get the tools I need to, quote, unquote, be better. I mean, I function fine, but I still know that there's certain triggers that I'm like,
I think a lot of us who have been through traumatic things, we keep ourselves busy and active, and
yeah,
we process things. And obviously, a lot of us go to therapy, but there's still a part of us that doesn't want to fully go back in time. I mean, I'm speaking for me. I can't speak for
yeah,
you, but there's times
yeah,
where I'm just like, I got through it. I'm fine. I don't need to talk about it. I'm over it. So it was 9 years ago. And then one little thing will get me, and just I'll go off on a spiral for 2 weeks because I'm pissed off or irritated. And I won't
yeah,
think about why I'm like that until after I come out of that. And I'm just like, that triggered me. Like, it's
yeah,
just in the moment, you don't realize it sometimes, and it's embarrassing for me, but it's exhausting more than anything else, and I'll go through periods where I will isolate myself from my family, my friends, until I go through my mood, and people are like, "That's not healthy," but I'm like, "You don't want me around you right now, like,
yeah,
it's not
yeah,
good for me, it's not good for you."
yeah, yeah.
Uh, I think that's my neighbor's dog.
Nope, it's my dog.
How is it?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go
I
on.
think too.
Hold on, hold on.
It's okay.
Lita, you wanna come say hi?
Oh, he's a little watchdog. Scotty Terrier, is that what he is?
It's a schnauzer.
Oh, Schnauzer. Wow, you can see how much I know about dogs, and I worked at a vet for a long time. I'm a cat person though, so
Okay. I was like, "Yeah, it's a schnauzer." Yeah, a white schnauzer. So
when and again, if I'm gonna ask questions, but if you don't wanna answer them, just say so, and I'll edit it out. Are
yeah,
you okay with talking about the last time you saw your children and the day that led up to, or do you wanna skip over that?
yeah, we can talk about that, that's fine.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't I've done so many of these that I'm like, I don't know what people wanna hear and what people are like, "We already heard that 15 billion times, we don't wanna hear it anymore."
No, I will listen to somebody a million times. I'm just wanting to piece it together, but I also don't wanna make you triggered or uncomfortable, so I wanna respect how you would feel. That's why I don't wanna just put you on the spot, and again, I'm gonna edit from the time that dog started barking till now, but, I just wanted to make sure before we move forward that you're okay with that, because I don't want
Yeah,
to upset
yeah.
you or take you off
No,
guard.
I mean, from the date of April 4th, 2024, um, it we everything was quote unquote normal and all of the stuff, there was no like looking back, I didn't see anything that was dangerous.
Mhm.
Like, there was nothing that made me pause. And so we would just continue to co-parent, and we were getting closer and closer to our final orders, which would have been in July of 2024. So we were really close. And we already had all of the holidays picked out, all of like what the summer schedule
No.
was going to look like, everything. And so I had sent them just like normal, nothing out of the ordinary, for a weekend visit. And it was Friday, May 17th. So that earlier that week was Lydia's birthday, May 14th. So that week was a little off because I got to spend Lydia's birthday with her because that was what was in the parenting schedule. And then Alec was with him. And
Okay.
so that day was a little off because of the birthday, but we had a great birthday. I took her to Red Robin. We went to Walmart, and she didn't want me to pick out any of her toys and wrap them. She wanted to be able to pick out her own toys. So we went to Walmart, and she just shopping spree, just picked out anything she wanted.
Oh.
And I can send you like a picture of that. But she has like a Spider-Man mask she wanted. She got two lightsabers, like one for her and one for Alec, because of
Oh.
course Alec needed one too. She got like Play-Doh, and she got like a big bluey coloring book, like chalk, like all this clothes, some type of like basketball or some type of ball, like all this crazy like stuff, like that. It was just, she just went down every aisle and was like, I want this and this. And obviously, I wanted her birthday to be special. And, I didn't let her go like crazy. She had to stay within like a limit. But
Yeah.
like for her, it was like, like shopping spree. We did that. And then we came back home, and she swam in our pool, or in my pool, and she loved that. And my friend came over, and we did cake and ice cream with her. And then my friend brought all of her nail polish stuff over, and she painted her nails
Oh.
because I can't do that because I can't see it, but she wanted her nails painted. So my friend painted her nails. And yeah, everything was good. She went to school the next day. Everything was great. So that, I think her birthday that year was like on a Tuesday. And so that Friday, it was his weekend, so I took them to school like I normally did, and our drop off spot was school. So during the school year, we'd always transition at school, meaning like if it was his weekend, I dropped them off on Friday morning because I would have them on Thursday,
Mm.
and so I dropped them off Friday morning to school. And I remember Alec wanted to run and go see his friends. And he didn't say I love you or anything. He just wanted to see his friends. Plus, I think he was upset at me because I think I forgot his water bottle or something. So, like, he just went off to be with his friends, which is fine because I was like, okay, I'm going to see you again. Like, I'll see you on, Wednesday after you're done with Dad's house. And so he went off and was with his friends. Lydia put her backpack down, and she would run and jump into my arms and like almost knock me over. I call it her running hugs. And I would literally have to brace myself because she would literally, the force of her, it would almost topple me over. So I hugged her. She said, I love you, mommy. I said, okay, go have fun with your friends and have fun at Dad's. And I'll see you next week, because our schedule was, if he had them, it was a 5-2-2-5 schedule. So he would have them, or I would have them for 5 days, and then 2 days, and then 5, and then 2. So it was like a 2-week rotation.
Okay.
And so he would have them Friday through Tuesday night. I would get them on Wednesday after school. And so I signed them in for before school care. I left, everything was fine. Saturday, everything was fine. No red flags. Sunday, the 19th of May, I heard from people at the church that they came to church that morning just like normal. Whenever he had them, he would take them to church. Whenever I had them, I would take them. And because we had the order of protection, we couldn't be at the same service. So our church had two different services. So
Hmm.
like he would go to one and I would go to the other. So we
Okay.
wouldn't be on campus at the same time.
Mhm.
And so he took them. According to the pastors and the people at church, the kids were seen running up and down the hallways. Nothing was wrong. They went to kids' church. They participated. And then they went home. And that night, May 19th, I don't know what happened, but he shot and killed them and then killed himself. And then I didn't know anything was wrong until the next morning, which would have been Monday, May 20th. The school called me
God.
and stated that there was an unexcused absence for both Alec and Lydia. And I thought, well, that's weird. Like, why are they both absent? Like, maybe they're sick. And, but then I was like, that's really strange because the 20th of May, they had 4 days left of school that week before summer break. This was their very last week of school. So they had the 20th through the 24th, and they would have gotten out the 24th for summer. So they had a 4 day week. And so I thought in my head, like, that's really strange. Like, they only had 4 days left of school. And so I called, no answer, texted, no answer. I called my attorney and he said, don't worry, wait a couple of hours. Maybe they went to the doctor, I'm sure they're fine. Wait a couple hours and then call the police if you can't get a hold of them and they'll do a welfare check. And I didn't listen to him. I only waited 45 minutes. And I only waited 45 minutes because I had to wait for my friend to come and get me. And she lived 20 minutes from me. So by the time I called her, she got in the car and drove to me. It was, 45 minutes. So then we drove to his apartment complex and his vehicle was in the parking lot. So then I was concerned because his van was in the parking lot, but he wasn't answering the phone and he's not answering phone calls or text messages. So I walked up to the door and I knocked on the door and there was no answer inside. Like, it was quiet. There was no, like, Alec and Lydia would have been like, door, or they would like there would have been some noise. They would have been my kids were not quiet kids. They would have been like, Dad, there's somebody at the door. Like, they would have been like or running to the door. And there was nothing. And so I called and I could hear the phone ringing from inside. So then I got really scared. And I'm still not thinking that, like, they're dead behind the door. I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking
Okay.
like
Yeah, I was
something
gonna
else.
ask because I know he'd threatened that in the past, so I didn't know if that was your first, like.
No.
Okay.
No, it's still not registering. I'm
Mhm.
thinking maybe they're her. I'm thinking maybe I don't know. And so I think that my brain is like not letting me think those thoughts, right?
Mhm.
My brain is like protecting me. And so I call the police and talking to the dispatcher and, telling her everything. And they come and I explain what's going on. And at first, the police officer that I first talked to, he was just doing his job, but he was like, well, it's not your day. When's your day? And I said, my day is not until Wednesday, but they're not in school and it's the last week of school. And I'm concerned his van's here, his phone's ringing from inside. And they're like, I know that they have to do their job, but they're like, could they went to the pool? Could they be going for a walk? And I'm like thinking in my head, guys, it's a Monday afternoon. He's supposed to be working and they're supposed to be at
No,
school.
school.
And it's like sprinkling, like raining. I'm like, they're not walking. Like, they're not I knew at that point, I was like, they're not like just walking around the neighborhood. They're supposed to be at school. They would have made sure that he took them to school. It was their last week of school with all of their like celebrations and stuff. Like, they wouldn't have wanted to miss school. And so I finally I remember I was talking to two police officers and they were nice and everything, but they didn't know my case. And then all of a sudden, this gentleman started walking towards me and he's like, hi, Hope, do you remember who I am? And I was like, oh, yes, you're police officer so and so. You were at the incident in October last year, October 2023, at the hotel when he had a psychiatric break. And he's like, yes. He's like, this is not a normal situation and the situation in October wasn't normal. And I believe that it's in everybody's best interest if we ask our sergeant if we can get permission to go inside. And he's like, is that okay? And I said, yes, please do. Like, that is fine. Please ask your sergeant, you can go inside. And so they had the maintenance guy unlock the door. They got approval from their sergeant and they went inside and they asked us to move down the parking lot a little bit because they had like their shields out. They didn't know what to expect, right? So they had us move down a little bit. And I knew something was wrong because two police officers went in and then like three more and then like two more. So there's like more and more police officers kept going inside. And then for this faint split second of a moment, because we're literally a block and a half from the police and fire station, I hear a siren and then I hear it go off. Like I hear it stop. And it was like a split second. Like it was like, woo, and then it stopped. And so I knew that they probably, like now, and even in my head, they probably found them and they probably were gonna call
Oh,
ambulance, and then they realized, like, there was
oh,
nothing they could do, and so they stopped. But it was like a faint of, like, a siren starting, and then it stopped. And so I remember thinking, like, "Oh my gosh." Like, that was kind of like the moment that I was like, you know, "This is not good." And then they came out, and they told me, "Hope, we're sorry to inform you, but all 3 are deceased inside."
and oh
And then
god.
yeah, and then my whole world shattered. I think I stepped forward.
I was gonna
I
ask, like,
yelled, "N"
did your instinct kick
yeah.
you just wanna run in there, or were you more like,
No, I think I stepped forward and I said, "No," and then I sat back down. Like, I didn't wanna run in there. I didn't wanna see that. I mean, I thank God that when I knocked on the door and I tried the door handle, it was locked. Because if
"Oh,
it was unlocked, I would have went inside. And so I'm so glad that I didn't see that, because I could only imagine. But
oh,
I have other friends that have lost children to filicide who have seen their children deceased right after. And that is something that, like, you cannot unsee. And that's trauma that you, like, even more so. So I think that, like, God shielded me from that, like, having that door locked, like, 100%. And so we had to go to the police station and sit there. They had 2 victims advocates. All of my friends were there. The sergeant came in. They had a clergyman, like, priest, come in and sit with me. Like, this is like a whole boardroom table filled with people. And yeah, it just wasn't real. It just didn't seem real. And so they let us go. I think we were there maybe an hour. I don't know time. I have no idea on the time. But they let us leave, and I went back home, and my friend had to go inside and close my Alec and Lydia's bedroom doors because I couldn't do it, and I didn't even wanna go in that part of the house. So I stayed in the front part of our house, which had, like, our kitchen and living room. I didn't even wanna go back by the bedrooms because my bedroom was right across from theirs, so, like, I didn't even wanna go to my room or my bathroom because
oh,
I didn't wanna go by their rooms, but I had to because those were the our bathrooms were right there too, so you had to go back by their rooms to go to the bathroom. And then my sister and my aunt flew out to be with me, and my church was with me, all of the pastors and my whole Bible study group and life group. And they stayed with me for like 4 days. I wasn't
oh,
left alone. And in those 4 days, again, this is like my faith is so important. And I talk about it so much in my book. But like, even though this tragedy happened and Alec and Lydia are gone, God was still showing up, like, over and over and over again. Like, we packed up my whole house and donated all of my stuff that I didn't need. We packed up and got like, all this is within 4 days. Yes, we have a lot of help because we have, like, everybody from the church and stuff, but, like, this shouldn't have happened. Like, packing up a whole house, donating the stuff I didn't need or couldn't bring back with me because it was too heavy. I would just have to buy it back in Michigan when I came back here. We had this we sold his vehicle back to the dealership because I don't drive, but my name, thank goodness,
oh,
was on the vehicle too as a person. So I sold the vehicle back to the dealership in like 2 hours. So that was like a huge thing. Like I contacted the gentleman that sold us the vehicle, and he was there that day, and he actually he was the husband of one of the teachers I used to work with at the school I used to work at. And so, like, they heard about what happened on the news and, like, they helped. Like, he was like, "Bring the van, bring the keys, that's all you need." I was like, "I don't need a title, I don't need any of the regular stuff you need
oh,
to sell a car. I didn't need any of that." He was like, "No, bring the car and bring the keys. I will do everything else." And he did. And so we sold it back to the dealership and we got everything packed up. My aunt and my sister took everything to, I think, FedEx or something, and shipped every single box back that I needed.
wow.
to Michigan because we had to fly back. My aunt and my sister were not gonna drive all the way across the country to get back home. And so we flew back. So this happened on a Monday. Well, technically they died on Sunday the 19th, but I found out on Monday the 20th. And then by Friday the 25th, we were on a plane back to Michigan.
You probably
S
didn't sleep at all during these days and
No, I remember one time I know the first night I didn't sleep at all. My friend stayed with me and she fell asleep, but I didn't sleep at all. I went out in the I tried to sleep and I couldn't. So I went out in the living room and I remember the side lamp just being on. I just sat there. And then I think the next couple of days I did sleep, but I would only sleep during the day if people were there. So,
oh,
I would go in my room and I would sleep, but it would only be for a couple of hours, and it would only be during the day if people were there. Yeah, and then I got back to Michigan, and I lived with my sister and my brother-in-law and my niece and nephews, and I lived with them for 2.5 months. I mean, the other thing is I had a little puppy, my puppy Joy that you met, and she was 2 months. And so when all this happened, we're packing everything up, and I'm burst into tears. And my sister's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "How can we get Joy back? Am I gonna have to leave her?" And she's like, "No, we're gonna take her with us."
oh,
And so my neighbor went and got Joy a dog carrier. She got Joy a necklace with a little tag on it. My neighbor took Joy to the vet to get the medicine she needed to fly and the note for the airlines to say that she could fly.
wow.
So there's all these people stepping up and helping, and mind you, I didn't live at this house very long. We lived at this house for 2.5, maybe 3 months before they died. We had sold our marital residence before we got divorced. We sold it in as we were doing our proceedings. And
Mm.
I took that money and I bought a new house and I bought my dream house for Alec and Lydia and I had a pool and all this stuff. And so all these people are stepping up and this neighbor and stuff that I've literally known for 3 months. It's doing all of this stuff. So, it's just amazing. Yeah, so I went back and lived with my sister and everybody and lived at her house for 2.5 months. We had a celebration of life for my kids, Alec and Lydia, July 20th, which would have been 2 months after they passed. We had a beautiful celebration and got a tent and we got those really fancy porta potties and stuff because my sister didn't want everybody trekking in her house to go to the bathroom. So we bought the fancy trailer with the nice porta potties and rented it and stuff. And then we had the food all catered and everything. Mind you, nobody knew my case, and
Oh,
I have to tell this story, but we were doing the food prep, and I was talking to the people and telling them the numbers, and they ask you "What is this for?" And I say, "Oh, it's a celebration of life for my 2 children." And they went through everything and they're like, "Yeah, we got it, and we'll send you the quote later on tonight." And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "When you see the quote, just let us know if everything's good, and then we'll get everything started." So they sent me the quote. I'm looking through everything, and at the bottom it says 0. So I call them and I'm like, "Everything looks great. Everything is correct with the numbers and everything, but your calculation at the bottom says 0." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're gonna cover everything." They didn't know me. They looked up, I found out later, they Googled me. They Googled the
oh
case
my
and they found it.
goodness.
And so they paid for everything. They paid for all the food. And mind you, this is couple $1,000s worth of food for a celebration of life. It's not cheap. And so they covered everything. They came and they it was so beautiful. It was amazing.
Oh,
We had my friend and it was my friend and my sister's sister-in-law made desserts for everybody. So they had decorated cookies, and then my friend has a bakery as well, and she made cake pops and brownies and all of this stuff that the kids would have loved. And it was just a great celebration. We did a fireworks show after in the backyard because I wanted to do something, and everybody's like, "Oh, you could do lanterns or butterflies," or and I was like, Alec and Lydia loved fireworks. I was like, and it was around 4th of July because it was July 20th, like I said. And so right before July 4th, my brother-in-law and I went to, like, a fireworks store and bought, like, all these fireworks, and he lit off all these beautiful fireworks for Alec and Lydia. There's, like, green ones and silver and pink and purple and all the colors, and Alec and Lydia's favorite colors, Alec's was green and Lydia's was pink and purple. So her urn is purple with sparkles. It, like, sparkles, when the light shines on it, it, like, sparkles back. And then Alex is, a wooden box with a trail on it, like a trailhead, and then trees and mountains. And the reason I did that was because he was an honorary member of Trail Life USA for 2 years. And
Aw.
so as soon as I saw that urn, like, it was on the first page of the urns, like, that you can select on the website. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, "That's Alex." And I
Aw.
remember my sister saying, "Yep," and we both, like, just started bawling because as soon as we saw it, we're like, "That's his."
Aw.
Trail life, trees, mountains, like, that's his. Lydia's, we had a bit more of a difficult time to figure out because I wanted originally her favorite color was pink, and I couldn't find an urn that was pink that was like a little girl. All the pink urns were, like, flowery, like, old lady looking, and I was like, "I'm not putting a 6-year-old in a old lady looking or 80, old lady looking urn." And so we went through every single page and we couldn't find anything. And again, this is a God thing. My pastor who's helping us with everything, coordinate with the place that we went through for the urns, she called and she was like, "We got Alex picked out. His is great. We can't find anything for Lydia. Hope just isn't liking anything." And he's like, "Well, what did Lydia like?" And I was like, "Well, Lydia loved pink and she loved purple and she loved sparkles." And he's like, "Well, I have this perfect urn. It's not on the website, but we have it here and it's purple. And when it shimmers, it sparkles back with the sun." And as soon as we heard that, we're like, "Yes, that's perfect." So we have those 2. And another thing that is such a God thing is, in all of this, I try to decide what to do, whether I bury them or cremate them, and going back and forth, and I
This was
decided to
going on during the 4 days before you moved back
Yes.
to Michigan.
Before I moved back, yeah. And so I'm trying to figure out if I'm gonna cremate them or bury them, and I finally decided that I'm gonna cremate them because I don't want to bury them, quote, unquote, as my brother-in-law said, "Don't bury them in the desert." And I said, "No, I'm not gonna bury them in the desert, they're gonna come with me." And so we were doing that, and my pastor was talking to the people again, and she was telling them, and they found out what happened, and they originally were like, "Okay, we're going to give you, half off for Alec and Lydia." And then they called back like an hour later. This is the same day that we're sitting in the dealership selling the car. So we're in the office of the
Oh.
dealership dude and he's going to sell the car. He's like gone. The phone rings. My pastor's talking to the people on the phone about the urns and the cremation. And they call her back and they said, "We know that we told you that we're going to cover Alec and Lydia's urns, but we found out what happened and we're going to cover everyone's cremation, including Brock's." And so
Oh,
everybody's
wow.
was, yeah, including his, because they didn't wanna put that burden on me to have to decide that, and that's something in me that I was literally like, "What do I do?" Like, do I cremate him? Do I just, because there's so many emotions, people are like, "Well, you could just leave his body there and don't claim it." Like, like all of these different things, and I was morally as like, yes, he was my abuser. Yes, he did all of these horrible things. Morally, I couldn't do that. I knew that I had to do
Yeah.
what was, I knew I had to do, something.
Oh.
And so they're like, "We're going to cremate him too." And so everything was paid for. The only thing I had to pay for was Alec and Lydia's urns. And I got some like keepsakes, like necklaces and stuff with their ashes. I paid for that. But all the cremations were covered. And I just cremated him, I didn't put him in an urn, and I shipped him back to his family. So, we definitely believe that that was definitely a sign from God because literally a half hour before that, before we'd went to the dealership and before the people had called, we were walking around the grocery store talking about what we were going to do, and we're like, what do we do? What do we do with him?" And so God was like, "You don't have to worry about it." So, yeah.
That's a lot. That's heavy. I was gonna say It sounded like you were surrounded by angels because
Yeah,
what are the like, I don't know that many good people like that, let alone look at the entire community that came around you and stepped up, and it was like God just putting these people right in front of you, like, that gave
it
me
is.
chills when like,
Yeah,
I didn't even stop to think of what you were deciding to do with him, and then, for you to still have that respect and, your morals, you still have to do something because that's that was your children's father, and
yes. And again, with abuse, right? Like I want to have your I always share this in all my speeches and stuff and on podcasts. When you're in an abusive marriage or relationship, it's not all abuse all the time. There's
mm-mm,
still good memories. There's still things that happened that still make me smile. Like it wasn't just like I met this person and he started abusing me
yeah.
right away. There's still good things that happened. And so I like to talk about that too because it's not just like these are like these horrible people. Yes, they did horrible things. Yes, they're abusers. Yes, they do horrible things, but not every single part of the relationship is horrible. There has to be some good with the bad.
And you have to grieve both. You have to grieve the good and the bad.
Correct.
Regardless if they're still here, if they're deceased, you loved somebody, you shared a life
Correct.
with somebody, you brought kids into
Correct.
this world with somebody. That doesn't just go away overnight. That doesn't,
Correct.
despite
And that
anything that
And
he
that
did.
never will go and that never will go away. He's always going to be a part of my story. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if yes, I wanna heal from that and I'm working on that, but he'll never be not a part of my story.
No, yeah, no, absolutely not. And I would hope nobody would expect that from you. I mean, that you spent what 13 years with somebody and
Yes, ma'am.
he is a part of this story. So in order to keep keeping Alec and Lydia's name, I mean, people want to know the story, so he is part of that story. You can't just erase him out of that. I mean,
Correct.
and again, like you
Correct.
said, I have a lot of good memories of my abuser, and sometimes I stop and think like, "Why are you thinking about that?" But I have to stop and remind myself that there was parts of that person that I did love and care about, and that doesn't
Yes.
just disappear. To this day, there's parts that I still care about. But
Yes.
I thought you were strong before. I don't have a word right now because I didn't even realize, like, it never crossed my mind that, and that's the ignorance of me that I mean, I didn't know you went through all this in 4 days. I mean, selling a car, packing up your house, choosing your children's urns, which I can't even imagine how that I don't wanna know what that feels like, and I'm just so sorry, and then having to do right by your estranged husband, and you still made sure he got back to his family because a lot of people would have just left him there. So
Yeah.
that shows your character, and, like, God bless you because
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that, Hope, and I don't even have a word to describe that right now.
But
It's just
you never know again, you never know what you're capable of unless
mhm,
it's put in front of you, right?
mhm,
So, I always hear people say exactly like, "I could never do that. I could never lose my kids. I would not." You never know what you are capable of when you're faced with it, when you have no other choice.
mm. So, when you got back to Michigan and
Mhm,
you had to process all of this and grieve through
mhm,
this and heal, which you'll never be fully healed, we know that. There will never be 100% closure, but to move forward through the hope and the pain, what did
yeah.
you do? What did you immediately start saying, like, I need to help other families, or did you take time to really just did it just come to you
No.
one day?
Yeah, so I lived with my sister, brother-in-law, and family for about 2.5 months, and then I decided to find my own place to live very close by. I still only live about 8 minutes from them on a good day, and so I still, I live very, very close. I wanted to make sure, I wasn't like gonna just like be like, see ya. Because they're very close to me and they're the only family I have because my mom and dad aren't here. So,
Mhm.
besides aunts and uncles, that's my family.
Yeah.
And so I found a place to live, brand new, beautiful, new home and new townhome. So it's really nice for me with a visual impairment. I don't have to do any of the outside
Um,
landscaping or any of the grass or snow blowing or anything like that. So
nice.
it's all taken care of for me. So that again is another blessing. And yeah, so when I lived with them, I did grieve. There were times that I remember like sitting on her couch and grieving, and I went to grief counseling. My brother-in-law would take me. It was group grief counseling every Tuesday, and he would drive me there. And go in with me and wait for me and then, take me back to their house. And so I was grieving when I lived with them, but it wasn't until I started to grieve on my own when I got my new house is when I
Right.
kind of like really grieved, right? Because I didn't have anybody around and I could cry when I wanted to cry. And not that I couldn't there, but my niece and my two nephews, they're twins. They're older, but they're not little kids, but they're not like grown and graduated yet. They're like
Right.
teenagers. And I didn't want them in 20 years to say, "Oh, remember Aunt Hope when you lived with us and all you did was cry and be in your room and it was dark and like you didn't want to get out of bed." I didn't want that. So I had to make a decision every single day when I lived with them to show up, even if I wasn't there mentally. And I wasn't. I was like a shell of a person, but I still woke up, brushed my teeth, took a shower, got dressed. I hung out with them because, again, it was during the summer, so they were
Right.
home every single day. It wasn't like they were in school. Now, if they were in school, would have been different. Yeah, it might have been harder for me because I wouldn't have that accountability of having to get up and do this. And it wasn't a have to. They never made me, but it was a
Yeah.
choice that I made because I didn't want them in 20 years to come to me and be like, all I remember from our cousins dying, our only cousins that we had dying, was you just being inconsolable and just crying. Like that's trauma for them. I mean, they already went through trauma losing their cousins. I didn't want more trauma of their aunt, being inconsolable at their house. They're what's supposed to be safe for them. So, yes, I did cry and I did grieve, but I didn't like fall apart. And so when I moved into my own house, that's when I really started to grieve and I really had to lean on God. And I started to journal every single day for hours in silence and in total silence with nothing around. All I had was my phone with my Bible app with no notifications on and a journal and a pen. And I would
Wow.
sit there and I would just journal and cry and journal and look up Bible verses and cry and journal and literally would do this for, I think I did it for 8 to 10 months straight, every single day.
Wow.
And through that, I really leaned on God, and that's what got me through this. That's why I'm able to stand or sit here today and talk to you. This is why I'm able to do the Alec and Lydia Act and write my book and do the podcast. Do everything that I do is because of God. It is, yes, he gives me the power to do it, but it's only through his Holy Spirit that I'm able to do this. And so when I was journaling, I decided that. I was like, I have to do something. And I didn't know what that something was. And that following Tuesday, God always gives you signs. That following Tuesday, I went to a grief group. Like I said, my brother in law would come get me. And then before that group, we went to dinner that night at this little diner. And I remember him talking to me. And he's not just a brother in law. I've known him since I was 14. My sister and I are 8 years apart. She's 8 years older than me. So he's like a brother to me. He's not even a brother in law. And so he was talking to me and he was like, "You should start a social media platform, Hope, because you should tell your story. You should share your grief. You should share about God and your faith. You should share about Alec and Lydia. You should share all of these things." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, Kurt. What? Yeah." And I'm very respectful, but I'm like laughing in my head, like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." And so I was like, "Yeah, maybe sometime, yeah, you never know." And I put it in the back of my head. And a couple of months later, I just thought about it again. And I was like, I think he was right. I think
Mhm.
today's the day. And I remember it was August 4th, 2024. And I started Hope in the Pain on social media. And the first platform I started was TikTok. And I remember my brother in law saying, "Okay, when you make your social medias, they all have to be the same and you have to have an email that goes along with it because he's a business owner. He owns his own business. And so
Okay.
I look up to him very highly. And so he knows what he's talking about. He knows all of the stuff. And so I did all that and I created Hope in the Pain. TikTok started to grow and then I did Facebook and then I started a YouTube for Hope in the Pain and then I did Instagram. And everything has grown so much. and even Instagram. Like, it took me from August 4th, 2024, or I think I started Instagram maybe a little bit later, but it took me like over a year to hit 1,000 followers on Instagram. Like, it took a long time.
Yeah, it does.
And, but now I'm almost at 2,000.
There you go.
So, uh, that journey has just helped me to share my story, and that's been really healing for me because everybody, just like you said, how are you able to just talk about this over and over again? Isn't it just re-traumatizing? Not really. It's healing because I get to share their legacy. I get to share I get to share what I'm doing now to make
Oh,
change to save other families and children. And then through that, met Rachel Holloway and
mhm.
Heather Norcraft, with Like
I
Mother
love
Like
them.
Murder. I love them too. And they were the first podcast I ever was on. I never talked to the media or anything when
Mhm.
everything happened. They tried to contact us and I never would respond. So, because I wanted to do it on my terms.
Yeah.
And so I contacted Rachel through TikTok and asked her if I could be on an episode of Like Mother Like Murder because they just did one for Brandy Morey Poles for Rowan Morey, who was a case in Michigan who died of filicide, a little boy. He was 6 years old. And I reached out and I told them my story, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll have you on." And from that, that was my first ever interview with the whole case. And then I just became friends with them, and I think a couple months later, Rachel came to me and was like, "I know this might sound crazy, but I keep thinking that you should do a podcast." And mind you, this is another God thing. Like 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before, I thought the same thing. And I immediately shut it down because I was
Oh,
like, nope, not going to do that. And so again, when God wants you to do something, he'll bring other people into your life to say the same thing to you that you were all that
yeah.
you know, just, clarification and making sure like, "Hey, that was me. It wasn't your own brain. This is like, you need to do this." And so I was like, "Yeah, I guess yes, we could do a podcast." And I was excited. I was like, "Yeah, we can like host it together. Like Rachel's great." Like she's like, "No, you're going to host it." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what to do, Rachel. I have no idea like how to host a podcast." She's like, "It's okay. I'll teach you."
Oh,
And so she is the editor and publisher of the podcast. So it's Rachel and I. But I'm the one that hosts it and I'm the creator of all the episodes. I do everything. Rachel just she does all the amazing work behind the scenes, all the editing and all of that. And I'm under their podcast company, Momcast Productions. And it's been great. We are going to be starting season 4 in September of 2026. So I can't believe that it's not even been a year and we've almost completed, I think, like 35 episodes.
wow.
So yeah,
Good for you
it's
guys.
amazing. So
I love knowing
yeah,
you guys. Well, it's like I feel like when I met, I don't know, is it Danny After Dark? No, it was Rachel. Rachel and Heather I met in Denver and
okay,
somehow ended up being friends with Danny. I don't even like I didn't meet Danny until Vegas, but I felt like I was
okay,
already close friends with her.
yeah,
And it's just all you guys are such a powerful group of just genuine women. There was no
they're awesome.
cattiness. There's
Yeah,
nobody stuck up. Nobody thinks they're better than anybody. It's just fun, genuine
mhm.
appreciation for one another. And when Jules gave me a necklace and said, "You're in our, podcast girl gang, podcast her," that's what it's called, right?
Podcasters, yeah,
Yeah, she gave me a little necklace, and I'm like, I was like so humbled and honored because I was like, I barely know anybody in there except for the few I've named, and they're just so welcoming, and I'm just
yes,
blessed and honored to know all of you because everybody has a story
yeah.
and
They
everybody
are
built.
they're so welcoming. I want you to know, like, yes, I've met Jules like last year, and obviously knew Heather and Rachel and a couple of them, but I didn't meet the vast majority of them until Vegas. No,
Really?
yes, or no, sorry, until Beyond the Crime in New
Oh,
Mexico in April. But
I
like
was
still,
invited to speak at that and do my podcast, but I couldn't get off work in time, and Danny referred me, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna go," and then I had to back out, so you would have met me
okay.
then.
Yeah, but they're just great. I mean, honestly too, because I mean, I don't even know. I think it was Jules said this to me. She said she's just amazing. She's so proud of me. She's like, "You do so much and this is your life.
Mhm.
With us, she's referring to herself and the other podcasters, we can turn it off. We can have our own lives. We can like step away. But this is your life. This is like your reality.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm just covering true crime and I can step away from it. Like, this is my life. And so, like, to hear her say that, but to still have them be so, like, welcoming, and because, yes, I cover, filicide crimes within my podcast, but
Well,
it's so vastly different, from what the majority of the podcasters do,
yeah, it
because,
is.
mine's, filicide crimes. So, which is like, crazy that it went from 500 cases in 2024, according to the FBI, to now there's over 700 kids who have died within the last 2 years. So it's increased by 200 kids in the last 2 years to be 700 cases a year.
Is that
And those are
national or just in
national, but those are the ones that are actually listed as filicides,
uh
but we know that there's so many missing children that were probably filicide crimes, but they haven't been listed as that because they're still missing. So we believe that it's much more in like the thousands.
I would assume
So, but
I would
but
think
what
so.
but what the FBI says, it's like 700. But still, like, for it was like when I first Googled it, when I figured out what filicide was, like when I Googled it, like it's all I put in. I was on my sister's couch and I remember like typing in like child murder by father, and it like came up as filicide. And I was like, it has a name? Like what?
I never heard of
And
that until I discovered who you were. I didn't know what
yeah,
that word meant, and I'm like, "What is filicide?" And then I did my own
yeah.
research on it, and
Yeah. So it's filicide. So the intentional act of any parent or caregiver
well,
killing their own child. And so, yeah, and there's different types of filicide. So there's like altruistic, there is revenge filicide, there's psychotic filicide. There's like 5 different types of filicide. There's infanticide, which is like infants from like 1 years and under. So there's different types of filicide. But yes, I mean, we were at CrimeCon, and probably from the 3 days we were there, there's
well,
probably like 20 people that came up to our booth that knew what filicide was. The rest of them, and those are the people that like work in the field or like have heard of, it. The rest of them, the thousands of people were like, no, we have no idea.
uh-huh.
So, and we had somebody come up to us, one of the women, she was there. She's like, it's my sixth CrimeCon that I've been to, and I've never heard of this. I'm so glad that you have a table. I think that you should be a speaker sometime for
Me
CrimeCon.
too.
So that's what we are trying to do in the future. So,
Now,
CrimeCon, if you hear
I was
this,
gonna say, when many of them this year when I pre-registered for our pass for Orlando, I this year instead of naming off people that everybody knows, I made sure I listed you, I listed Joanne, Ali Lautzer's mom,
uh-huh,
Maggie Phillips, people who need to be heard.
uh-huh.
We don't need to hear certain people every single year. And I'm just gonna say that. You
Yeah,
guys come every year, you have a story, you can educate other people on filicide. That needs to be that has to have a spotlight because like you just said, and I just told you, I'd never heard of that word.
yeah,
So if nobody's being educated, how are we supposed to as a society make changes?
right.
I mean, you Googled it yourself and you're like, oh, there's a name for this.
There's a
So
name for it. Yeah.
that's you should definitely be a speaker. And next time somebody posts something, I mean, I might just go in the CrimeCon group and write that, but I did write it down when they asked us who we want to see because I just
Yeah.
feel like it
Thank you so much. Yeah.
no,
That
you're
means a lot.
welcome. No, it I'd rather hear stories like this because and I'm gonna tell you something, and while you're talking about your faith in God, the past few weeks, I've had a whirlwind. My life has just been domino effect. Every little thing that could
Mm,
go wrong has gone
go
wrong,
for
and I've been finding myself in the mornings just reading random Bible verses, and
Mhm,
I haven't always been religious, I'm very spiritual, I believe in the afterlife and signs and all that, but
mm,
lately, it's just something's drawing me to
uh-huh,
read them, and every time I read, I'll just read a random one, and then whatever I
uh-huh.
read, it, like, fits that how I
It
feel.
applies. Yeah, that's how he works. And yeah, that's why I wanna say, like, that's why I always say, like, faith, right? Because,
Uh-huh,
like, for me, it's not a religion
uh-huh,
because it's a for my own journey, it's a walked out faith. Like, in the Bible, it never says that we come to know him
uh-huh.
greater through sunshine and rainbows. It says we come to know him through suffering. And I'm always like, well, God, why do I have to suffer? Like, can't I just know you just if it's sunny and bright outside and sunshine and rainbow? Why do I have to suffer, God?
No,
But I mean, I
I
mean,
just did an episode on my other podcast, Turning the Korner, yesterday, and that's one where I talk about my realities. And I thought, all this stuff's been going on around me. And I always feel like it's a lesson or something is about to enter my life that's going to like redirect me to something. And I'm like, some people would, in my old mindset, I would go, why am I being punished? Why is God doing this to me? But now I'm like, okay, what is God trying to teach me? What is God
mhm,
putting in front of me? Why is this
mhm,
happening? Because I know from
mhm,
prior experience, when you, in hindsight, you look back and you go, that's not a coincidence that this happened. Like, and the more I go through things, being a survivor, I have been helping somebody on the side privately get through domestic violence. And I said to myself, back when it started happening to me, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I couldn't be a resource for somebody if I didn't go through it. And I'm not saying, thank God I went through it, but I do feel like we all go through something because we have a purpose. And whether it's you being a voice, whether it's me being a voice, all of us coming together, I strongly believe people meet each other for a reason. You had all those neighbors, you had your church, you had your neighbor take your dog, you had all those people come forward to pay the bill. Like that to me is angels God is sending
mhm,
and
mhm.
putting them right in
Yeah,
front of you. And
yes,
you have to be open to it. And
yeah,
every day now I get the things I'm going through. I've been posting Bible verses the past few days too. And there was one that I'm just like,
it's awesome.
that is everything right now. And it's interesting because I don't look them up. I have this website that sends me something every day. I don't even know what it's called. And it's
Mhm,
just the most random Bible verses. And I'm like, it's just interesting. And as much as we want to get mad and blame other things or blame God, why are you doing this to me? I think it is important. I mean, you're living example. You show up every day for yourself. You still show up for your children. You show up
mhm,
for others.
mhm,
And you could lay in bed all day and cry, and
mhm,
that's fine, and I'm sure you still do. I'm sure you have
mhm.
your days, but you also have to continue. And
Yeah,
instead of continuing going down a dark path, you decided to take your faith and help other people and bring a light to the world. I mean, you're changing the laws, you're protecting families and
yeah,
children. Even
yeah,
though you no longer have your children physically here, you are
yeah,
fighting to help others. And that is,
yeah,
I don't know the word, but it's good. I don't know what words to use, but
yeah,
that's, that's your faith and strength, and I think
yeah,
it's admirable because if other parents see this, like my mom even asked me, "How does she do this?" Well, I'm gonna send my mom this podcast. I'm like, "This is how she does this." It's her faith, her
mhm,
belief in herself, her belief in the community, in your
yeah,
church, and
yeah.
other people. And I don't want to sound cliche because your name is Hope, but you have hope in other people. That they can be good people. There are good people out there, and
Yes, yes.
they're not, the whole world's not out to get us.
No.
But when you've been through situations that are traumatic, it's hard to accept that. And then when people do come forward to be nice, you're like, why are you being nice? Like, why are you doing this for me? Like, I just find it very, what I needed. I don't know if you're going to want to believe this, but I feel like everything you said tonight is what I needed to hear.
Yes, I
And I'm
believe that
like,
100%, that God puts people in our lives that intercede for us. Yes, that's
yeah,
exactly what I was saying, yeah.
yeah.
Like,
I just,
when we don't believe in ourselves, he brings people in to be like, "Hey, I'm interceding for you right now to tell you this." So, there you go.
yeah, no, thank you. And, I know we could go on that, and I will have you back on because I know you're
Mhm.
still changing laws and more things are gonna come, and I do wanna learn
Yes.
a lot more about Lydia and Alec, but I know you wrote a book, I did buy it, you signed it. I haven't gotten to it yet, unfortunately, because life's been crazy, but tell us about your book, where they can buy it. There's still hope. So when
Yes.
did you write this book?
So I wrote this. It took about a year, 8 months to a year. It was a part of like my journaling process. So once I started journaling, like I talked to you about, it kind of just came into my head that, okay, I need to like write everything down
Oh,
that I've been through and share my story. And it was just so healing for me to put it all down on paper as like a safe space. And yes, I know people are going to read this, but if you go online, the reviews by complete strangers, I know that it's helping people, which is
yes,
amazing because I put it out there to help one person and it's been able to help so many others.
yes,
And it's tiny, so it's an easy read. It's available on Audible, so I have the audio version. I recorded it, so you can listen to it. It's professionally recorded, but I recorded it, so it's my voice. It's available on Amazon in paperback, like this one, and then it's also available on ebook through the Kindle app, so you can buy it on there. And all proceeds come right back to me and go right back into Voices Against Filicide podcast, into all the advocacy work that I'm doing to raise awareness.
And where can people find you on social media and your podcast? You have Voices of Filicide, and what platforms are they can tune in on?
Yep, Voices Against
Or
Filicide.
sorry, I always say of. I don't know why I can do that. Voices Against Filicide. Where can they
Yeah,
find your podcast?
yeah. Voices Against Filicide is available wherever you stream your podcast. So Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, all the ones. YouTube, it's on my Hope in the Pain YouTube channel. We have a playlist on there for it. My social media platforms are all Hope in the Pain. So all depending on the platform, sometimes it's like hope.in.the.pain, but just type in Hope in the Pain and it will come up. It's a picture of my kids as the icon. And yeah, I share daily. I try to daily on social media and to interact with my community. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's great. Thank you guys for sharing your stories of surviving domestic violence, your stories of how the Alec and Lydia Act is helping you. All the emails, all the messages that I've been getting, I read every single one of them. If I don't respond back, it doesn't mean that I haven't read it. It's just sometimes there's too many. So,
Yeah, and
but
you're
I
out making
greatly
changes in the
appreciate it.
world.
Yes, I'm so busy.
If they want to help the act and help you help other families, what are ways that our listeners can chip in to help, you get to places you need to be, or sponsor these laws, or anything they can
Mhm.
do? What can they where can they go to find that?
Yeah, so you can visit voicesagainstfilicide.odoo.com and you can get information on there of how you can help. You can follow on social media at Hope in the Pain. And if you want to bring the Alec and Lydia Act legislation to your state, you need to contact your local representative and senator and let them know that you want this groundbreaking child safety first legislation in your state. If you would like help with that, you can reach out to me on social media or through the website and I can guide you. But it really comes from your voice being in your own state. Once you get somebody that's interested in sponsoring the bill from your own state, they can then contact me and I can then work with them to move the bill forward. But it really starts with you because you are the ones that live in those states.
Mm.
And not that they won't listen to me, but I don't live, let's say, in Texas. And if I call Texas and tell them about it, they're going to be like, this is great, but you're not a constituent of our
Mhm.
state. And so, you as a constituent, as a resident of Texas or Florida or California or wherever you live, you are the one that has to email or call your local rep or senator. And if you're like, Hope, I have no idea how to do that, you can Google it. All you have to do is type in your city and like I type in like who's my local representative for Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it will come up. And
Mhm.
so that's all you have to do. And then it will also give you all different kinds of representatives and senators. So you don't even just have to contact your local, you could contact as many senators and reps in your
Mhm.
state. That's what we did in Arizona. Just kept contacting them. So yeah.
Eventually, somebody sees it. I told you tomorrow I have a meeting with our local senator rep, Marty Flynn of Luzerne and Lackawanna County, because I'm in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and I'm pushing to have, because my abuser has violated his PFA and nobody does anything. He's done
Uh-huh.
this a few times. So they finally heard me because the DAs have ignored me. The cops don't do anything. So, like, we're going to have you come in and we're going to see if we can resolve these. But we also know that you have some other ideas. So, my goal, and I did post them on my page, I have 10 things I want to review with them on getting consequences tightened for the
Uh-huh.
registry. As soon as you get a PFA filed against you, you should have to automatically enroll. None of this repeating behavior. Because I know other
Uh-huh.
states are doing that where they have to, after they repeat the violations and then they register. No, because it could be a first and like the first time could be the last time.
Correct.
And there's other things I wanna go, but I'm going to bring up Alec and Lydia Act because it is still domestic violence, even though it's filicide, everything's connected to domestic violence, so I will be a voice tomorrow in Pennsylvania, and
Thank you.
I will tell them, and then if they are wanting to do more, I will connect them with you because you know that information, but, I definitely think this should be nationwide, hope it
Yes, thank you.
yes,
Yes,
and I
and
I
I
think
mean,
it will be.
I hope so, I hope so. Just so you know, in Pennsylvania, you have Caden's law. So Caden was a little girl, Caden Mancuso. She was 7. She died of filicide, and there is what's called Caden's law. So it's very similar to the Alec and Lydia Act. The only thing it doesn't include that the Alec and Lydia Act does include is that the Alec and Lydia Act includes the writing their findings in temporary orders. Caden's law doesn't include that, but it includes everything else. So
Okay.
Pennsylvania does have a domestic violence and child safety first bill. It's called Caden's law.
Okay. So they could
They could add
revise,
to it. They
add
could
to it. So
revise it. Yeah.
they wouldn't really make one for Alec and Lydia, but it would revise it.
They could revise it and add that specific section to Caden's law. And
Okay.
Caden is spelled Kaydens. Caden.
That will help when I bring that up to them tomorrow, because I'm sure they're aware of what that is. That's
Oh, I'm sure.
amazing.
Well, that's a Caden's law is actually they should they should be aware. Caden's law is actually federal law now. Caden's law started in Pennsylvania.
Never
Caden
heard of.
died in Pennsylvania. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you
Yep.
for that information.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing. I know you do it all the time and it's healing for you, but still thank you. Like I said, I knew bits and pieces, but I wanted to hear it from you. I didn't want to ask other people. And I know we talking about doing this for a while, and I would like to have you back when you start doing the Michigan bills and all
Yeah.
the other states, because I don't think you're going to stop. I think you're going to.
No, I might take a break, but I'm not going to stop.
But I love how your brother-in-law, said start a social media page, and now you have a social media page, a book, a podcast. You're changing laws. Like I love that. It's amazing.
It just kept snowballing, right? Like
That's
God's
what
like, and open
happens.
this door, and this door, and this door, and like,
Because I think it's because you see the help that you're giving other people, and it's a motivator of, okay, like somebody needs to do this, somebody needs to step up, somebody needs to be a voice. And it gives you a little bit of hope that
yeah,
people are getting some kind of healing from this.
yeah. And we've
And
had great opportunities. I mean, I've been able to speak at Beyond the Crime. I got to speak at a local event here about domestic violence that I actually put on that was called Hope in the Pain in Michigan. I got to be on Dr. Phil, I got to be on Beyond the Monsters, which is a huge podcast. Like, so all of these opportunities, God's just opening up doors. So
love it. Yeah. And they'll keep opening. I always wanted to go to Michigan. When I was in 4th grade, I wrote a report because I liked the way it sounded. Michigan. My mom said I'd come home and be like, Michigan, and I've never still been to Michigan. So next time
you're
you do
so
an event,
close. Y-
let me
Wait,
know.
aren't you in Pennsylvania?
I am. I'm in Northeast PA. I'm kind of by about 2 hours from New York, but I'm about an hour and a half from Philadelphia. So I'm right in that
Okay, but
by the
still,
Pocono Mountains.
it's not that far.
I lived
Like
in Ohio and it wasn't that far. I just never got there. So now
yeah,
maybe I'll come to Michigan and say, Mom, I'm in Michigan.
yes, come and see me.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Hope Hooton's story and Filicide and the changes she's making in the world. And please send her your thoughts and prayers as she grieves every day for the loss of her children, Alec and Lydia. But with the blessings she finds and the hope and the pain, she continues. And if you would like to learn more about the Alec and Lydia Act and you would like to help or get your state involved, remember to reach out to Hope Hooton at Hope in the Pain on social media and follow her podcast, Voices Against Filicide. Make sure you leave a review, subscribe, and while you're at it, please don't forget to review and subscribe to True Crime with Tiff Kline and Turning the Korner. Corner starts with a K. I am also on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on your favorite streaming platforms for podcasts like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon, and iHeart. And I will talk to you soon.